Good afternoon and welcome to Spicing Up Canvas. I am Greg Beyer, your distance education coordinator. And as I like to say, I'm grateful to each of you for choosing to spend some of your valuable time here with me. Whether you are here live or watching the recording, I hope that this is a helpful session and helpful information for you. I am your distance education coordinator, and in today's session, I'll be talking about how we can use HTML and CSS to make Canvas look better and do it in a way that will also preserve the accessibility of our content and material so that all of our students can access what we're teaching and can access the the content and of course complete the assignments. What I'm going to do is talk about HTML and CSS. I'll do a brief primer on what those are. And then I will show you some before and after, and also show you how to do various things like you see them listed there: create a disclosure widget, float and padded image, put text inside a box, make a striped table, and make a tabbed page. As I go through, please don't hesitate to type any questions or comments you have in chat, and I will periodically take a break from my talking to take a look at those, and of course ask you to share any questions live. As I mentioned before, this is being recorded and the recordings will be shared with everyone. Oh, and then I also have a resource document that I'll share with you at the end that has all the code that I'm going to demonstrate. So you don't need to worry about typing exactly what I'm showing you on the screen because you'll have access to all that. The first thing I want to talk about is what HTML and CSS are. Every web page that we look at is created using one or more languages. HTML is the foundation. It all starts with HTML, and HTML was the original language used to create web pages back when the World Wide Web was invented in the mid-90s. It's also the same tool that we use, or the same language that is used to add structure to a web page. It has limited formatting options, but it's actually better to do formatting with CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. So the middle S there, the S for style, is what we can use it for formatting. And then cascading means that those style codes can exist on multiple levels. We'll, of course, well, I'll actually tell you what those levels are right now. So the basic level is within the HTML tag, the very base level of the code. You can add style to a tag. So for example, you could take a paragraph and say, I want all the text in this paragraph to be underlined or bold or whatever. That's at the tag level using a style of the tag. Styles can also exist in the page header, which means that they apply to everything that's on that page. So you might say, I want every paragraph or every heading, for example, every heading one to be, 30-point bold font or whatever. That could exist at the level of the header. And then the third place that it can exist is what's called a style sheet. Style sheet exists elsewhere on the server, and within any page that's hosted on that server, you can call one of those styles and apply it within your page. Canvas allows us to edit styles at the base level within the tag only. So we can't change the style sheet, and we also can't change the page header style. But what we can do is we can use Canvas's styles, and I'll show you a couple of ways on how to do that today. Canvas also does apply some limits in which the HTML, which HTML and which CSS codes we're allowed to use. The developers at Instructure have decided to set up a system that helps protect us from ourselves, which is not a bad thing at all. And what's nice about Canvas, and all modern web pages more or less today have the same thing, is they basically use what's called a WYSIWYG editor, or what you see is what you get. And basically we can treat Canvas, the Canvas Rich Content Editor, we can treat it like a word processor, right? We can copy and paste formatted text. We can use the buttons that are there to format the text that's there. But we can also get behind that, and you'll learn some tricks today on how to tweak the HTML and the CSS to make it look perhaps a little bit better. We're going to begin with something actually that uses only HTML, and that is the disclosure widget. So the disclosure widget is something that allows you to hide additional information and add an arrow next to it so that the user has to select the arrows to make the additional information appear. And for this example, I've actually got the before and after on the same screen. You see there, I've got California, Oregon, and Washington listed. For each of them, I have their population, the population density, the percent that were foreign born, and the number of veterans. This is all from the 2020 census. On the right side, I've actually got that same information, but it's hidden underneath those arrows. And if someone were to click on an arrow, then it would expand and show you that information. So I'm going to show you how to do that in Canvas. I've got a Canvas content page set up. And I have that information there, right? There you see the California, Oregon, Washington information. So to activate HTML and CSS in the rich content editor, of course, we select the edit button to edit something. And then there's a little button on the lower right-hand corner up here, down here rather, that is the HTML editor button. When I select that, I'm now looking at all that content in HTML view, which again allows me to edit the HTML and also edit the CSS. The rich content editor, as I'm sure you know, is ubiquitous throughout Canvas. It's in every tool with a couple of exceptions. We can't use the rich content editor for comments and SpeedGrader, nor can we use it for messages that we send via the messages tool, the conversations tool. But I think pretty much it's available just about everywhere else, including our students have access to it. So if they are just composing something in discussion, or if you have them use the text box assignments tool, or if it's perhaps an essay question on a quiz, they do have access to the rich content editor as well. So this is HTML only. I don't have to worry about CSS here. And what I like to do when I'm working with the HTML editor in Canvas is I like to give myself some blank space before and after the change that I'm going to make. So what you can see here is I've got California, right? The California, that's in a paragraph tag. And the grammar of HTML is, for most tags, you open the tag, and that's the code for the tag, P for paragraph. You've got the angle brackets on either side of the P. And then you close the tag with the /P, right? Again, inside the angle brackets. So everything in between this opening P and the closing P, that's the paragraph tag. So that's California. Again, that's the content of that paragraph tag. And then another tag I'll mention here is the UL, which is the unnumbered list. So UL is a bullet list. And then the LI is the list item. So there's an unnumbered list that opens up here, and then it closes down here. And you can see that there are 4 list items. This is unnumbered, so that's the bullet list. If we make it the OL instead of UL, I'll show you what that looks like. That's outline list, and then actually switches it to numbered. Right, so you see there's a difference. I've got California items listed 1 through 4. So very briefly, again, some of the things we can do with HTML. Notice that when I added that extra space, Canvas got rid of it when I switched between views. So Canvas is pretty good about removing all those blank spaces that I typed in between the tags. I'm going to put those back and then do the disclosure widget again. So the disclosure widget, what I need to do is actually take the tag. I'm going to add the tag details, right? So I'm opening the details tag, the word details surrounded by angle brackets, and then I'm going to close the details tag after everything. And then the summary tag is what I'm going to replace the, in this case, California, and I'm going to replace the paragraph with a summary. So instead of P, I'm going to change this to the word summary and close the tag there, right? The word summary is there. The summary tag is before and after the word California. Again, I changed it from a P for paragraph to a summary for the summary tag. So I'm telling the browser, hey, browser, here are the details, but in order for someone to see the details, they need to click on this word summary. So I'm going to switch back to code view, or sorry, to WYSIWYG view. I see that it looks like I got it right because I got the triangle, but I actually have to save it to see it in action. And it worked, right? You see the summary is just the word California. And then if I click on that arrow, it's going to expand it down. For those of us concerned about accessibility, that's also keyboard accessible. So I just use the tab key to get there. I can use the space bar to expand it or collapse it. I'm going to go ahead and add those tags to the other two states in this list, and then I'll pause for questions. So let's go to Edit, HTML view. And again, what I like to do is give myself some space to work with. And let's take that word, is it on my keyboard? Yes, it is. Details, close the details, and then change that from P to summary. And then I'll do the same thing down here for Washington. And then close the details down there. And I'm confident that I did it right, so I'm just going to hit the save button. We'll see if I messed up. Woohoo! I got it. So you can see that, right? I've got those details, that additional information about the items in this list are now hidden, or yeah, that's the right way. They're hidden, but they're easily accessible by the students. If someone were to print this page, they would print, the printout would have whatever's visible at that moment. So if I only want Oregon's information to be visible, for example, and I go to print this, well, you should see, hopefully you can see that the print preview, right? Thank you for nodding. Right, you can see that only Oregon's information is visible. Okay. The next item, we're going to go into CSS here. I'll be adding style to an HTML tag, and I'm going to float and pad an image. By default, when you add an image to Canvas and you put text on the same page as the image, if you put text and the image on the same line, you're going to get something that looks like this, where the image is there. And look at all that empty space, right, above and below that first line of text. It would be nice if I could float the text around the image, and you can using styles. You can actually do this a little bit with the rich content editor itself. Like if you align the picture, it will add the float style. But what Canvas doesn't add is what's called the padding elements, which will allow you to put distance between the image and the text. And I'll show that to you. And then, by the way, here's the what it's going to look like afterwards, right? You see the image there on the left, and the text is basically floating around it. So let's go ahead and move and do that demonstration. So again, here's that content page that has that picture with the text floating around it. And I'm going to edit it and go into style and go into HTML view. So in this example here, I'm going to separate this tag out a little bit. Remember, I told you before that with HTML tags, most of them have to open and close, right? So here's the P for this paragraph. There's the opening P, and then the closing P is going to be down here, right? The /P. An exception to that, one of the exceptions is the image tag. So here's the tag. You see the angle bracket, IMG for image. Okay, that makes sense. And then it's what's called a self-closing tag. If you look at the end, you've got the slash and the what is that? Greater than symbol right at the end for the tag itself. So you don't have to have image content and then close the image. It's all basically within the tag. The image tag itself, in terms of the structure of the image tag, right? You've got image, of course. SRC stands for source. So that is the source of the image. In this example, if I look at the URL for the source, I'm actually grabbing this straight from Wikimedia. I grabbed that image from the Wikipedia website. It's a portrait of Aldous Manutius. I can't remember the third part of that person's name. Anyway, oh yeah, Aldous Pius Manutius, I've got it right there. And then also one of the part of the tag for the image tag is the alt text. Alt text is what people will hear if they're using screen reader software to listen to or read basically a web page. It's important that we have accurate alt text to describe what's in the image. What we don't want is someone who does not have the privilege of sight missing out in the meaning of, right, whatever the thing is that it is, whatever's being portrayed. You can see the width and the height are there as well. I'm going to add to this image tag a style attribute. So I'm going to type the word style, and then I'm going to type the space bar to make sure that I've got a space in between each of the attributes. So it's image, right, IMG for the tag. There's always a space. So this is the grammar of HTML, and then all the various attributes that apply to that tag, right? So source, of course, is the image. And if you look in this, if I look at the end of the source, there's a space in between the source and the alt tag. There's a space in between the alt tag and the width. and then there's space in between the width and the height. Tags can be in any order. Attributes can be in any order within that tag. So I've typed the word style. I've got a space on either side. That's great. I'm going to type the equal sign because I'm defining the parameters of the attribute. HTML appreciates it when we close stuff within quotation marks. So I typed both quotes there. And then within the quotation marks, I'm going to type the word float, colon, space, and I'm going to say the word left. So that's part of the style attribute. I'm floating the image to the left. And let's see what this happens if I just take this right now. All right. I've got the image floated to the left, right? You can see the text is over there. I can also float the image to the right if I wanted to. In this example, because the portrait is looking from left to right, I want the portrait looking at the text. So I don't want that image looking off screen, basically. But you may notice here that there is a lot of, there's actually zero space in between the end of the image and the text, right? That's a little bit hard to read. So I'm going to add what's called padding. So I'll go back into HTML view. Again, notice that it got rid of that extra space that I typed. Within the style attribute, right, you see it's got the parameter, I think is what it's called, float. I've got the colon, a space. I've got the value left. There's a semicolon there. So that's how I'm going to separate different parameters for the style. And so in addition to float, I'm going to put the word padding, colon, space. And then for padding, I can either put, I have to put a number. The number can either be a percent, which is going to be the percent of the window, or I can put pixels for pixels, and I put px for pixels. And you can actually put 1, 2, I think you can put 3 or 4 padding numbers here. If you put 1, it's going to put the same padding around all 4 sides of the elements, right? All 4 sides of the image in this case. If you put 2 numbers, one of those numbers is left, right, and the other one is top, down. And if you put 4, it's going to be left, top, down, right, whatever the other. So I have a hard time remember. I know that 1 is all 4 sides, but I only want to put padding on the right side, right? Because the image is on the left. I'm going to put a little padding underneath. So I think that if I put 4 numbers, the first number is going to be the top. So I'm going to put 0px, no punctuation except for a space in between these values. 10px because I want padding on the right side. So it's going to be top and then right, or maybe it's right from your perspective with my hand there. 10px, 5px on the bottom, and then 0px on the left. And again, I'll add a semicolon to close that out. So let's see if that worked. Yeah, not bad, right? You can see there's a little bit of pixel space there. Now, there's not enough text, or my image, my window isn't narrow enough to force the text underneath. But if I make the image smaller, actually, I don't even need to do that, right? When I selected the image, I can see there's some space there on the right side and the bottom side, and there's no space on the top or the left. Okay, so let me go ahead and hit save. And now I have this wonderful text there. If I make my window narrow, I'm going to see, actually, yeah, I'll see if this will work. Oh, there we go. I made it narrow enough, right, that the text now floats underneath. So I can also see there's a little bit of space in between the bottom of the image and the text. Now that you're confident with using HTML, looking at HTML and editing styles, we're going to add some more styles in the next couple of examples here. Let's move on to putting text inside a box. This may be hard to see on the screen. I'm not sure how big the text is on your side, but I've got some text there, and right in the middle, I've got a quote that's in a standalone paragraph, right? It says "Scribo aetheris." And I want that to pop. I want my students who again, who are privileged with sight to be able to, I want that to jump out at them. So I'm going to add a box around that text, and it'll then look like this. All right. And I'll talk to you about some of the box values too. So let's go ahead and move on to that. Okay, again, edit, HTML view. This is a standalone paragraph already. So in order to set this aside and to add a box, so I'm actually going to introduce a new tag, which is div. And I'll go ahead and close it here before I forget. Div, I think, means division, but it's a way to, to take this block of content on this page, and then you can style the division to do all kinds of stuff. So for the division style, I'm going to add a border. I'm sorry, what did I miss? I missed the word style. Style equals, and again, I like to do the close quotes before I forget. First attribute or first parameter is going to be border. And I'm going to type 5px, right? That's that value for the how wide the border is. And then I'm also going to say this is a solid border. So I'm going to stop right there. Let's take a look at that. So there's my solid border. What I'm going to next do is I'm going to add padding, which will separate the div from the stuff that's around it. And I'm going to add margin, and the margin is going to be inside the div. So let's make sure I've got the padding and margin. Sometimes I get those confused. Okay, so I've got the border there. Again, within the style attribute, I'm now going to add the word padding. And we know that the padding is, right, I can do all four numbers here. I'm just going to do one number here. And I'm going to make it 50 pixels. This should be obvious if I make it such a big number. Oh, yeah. Okay, good. Padding is on the inside. So I may have said that incorrectly. Padding is the distance between the elements, right? Not the elements, the div. Padding is the distance between the contents and the sides of the tag that it's in. Margin is a distance between the tag and the stuff that's on the outside. Okay, padding and margin. Me putting big numbers in to see which one it is. This is a normal thing I do when I'm doing this all the time because I still can't get it in my head. Okay, so padding, you saw 50 pixels. I'm going to drop that down to 10. And now I'm going to add the word margin. And in this case, I'm going to try to do margins on the sides only. And I want the margins to be flexible based on the width of the window. So instead of doing pixels, I'm actually going to do percent. And I'm going to try these numbers here, 0, and then 20%, and then 0, and then 20%. And I think that's going to be 20% on left and right and 0 top and bottom. Yep. So however wide this window is, 20% of it on either side is going to be blank, because that's what I said was the margin between this thing, the div tag, the div tag on the sides. And then while I'm here, why don't I go ahead and center this text, and I'll use the formatting buttons on the toolbar. So let's see what that did to the code. See, that actually, it added style to the paragraph, right? You see it added the style text align center. Okay, so that is the adding text in a box. There are options for what you can do for solid. Of course, you can change the size, the thickness of the border. You can also add colors. And I think I can just type the word red. Let's see if that works. It did work. Okay. So here's how you do colors. I'm going to mention colors briefly because this will come up as well in the next thing. Colors, there's some limited number of colors where you can just type the title of the color and it'll work. I don't know that mauve is one of those. Let's find out if that works. Nope, didn't work, right? Because there's nothing there. So if you want to add a particular color, you can also type the hex code. And the hex code is it's a hexadecimal code, 6 characters long. And, that's a lot of colors that you can use. You can actually find out what those colors are. I'm going to put a website here. I'm going to open it up and then I'll actually put it in the chat. Well, actually, you can do a search for HTML color codes. The one that I like to use, color codes.info. Okay, so I'm going to copy that. I'm going to put this in the chat for everyone. This link, and along with some other links, is in the resource document that I'm going to share with you at the end. So if you want to play with colors, go for it right now. But I'm going to take a look at these colors. And if I like this pink here, right, I can click on that. That's a little bit more than pink. But see this code here, FE2EF7? I can copy that code and just add it as part of the parameters for the border part of the values for the border parameter, right? As part of the style attribute. And now when I switch over, I should have that color on the outside. So these are things that you can do. You can play with color. You can do all kinds of stuff. Let me show you one more color resource while I'm here before I pause for questions. And that is on our college website, on the employees website, if I go to faculty and staff, no, it's under college-wide. There's a link for public information office. And on the PIO's website is a link to the branding toolkit. And this has color guide. So these are the official color codes for CRC. So you may notice inside our Canvas, right, these color codes that are on the course, the global navigation menu, the color codes that are in the default images, right, that are part of the Canvas course, those are all the official color codes. So thank goodness our PIO put those codes out there because I got tired of having to guess when I was doing this in the early years. The next thing I want to demonstrate and talk through is making an impact with icons. So this is where, remember I mentioned before about what a style sheet is, and the Canvas style sheet, they have a whole bunch of icons that they use throughout Canvas. So for example, you see like the little pencil, right, for the edit, that's a Canvas icon. And because we can use Canvas's style sheet because we're working on the same server, we can actually import those icons anywhere by just typing a few words of text in the HTML. So I'll show you how to do that. In this example here, I've got my attendance activities information, right? We are supposed to drop students who don't show up in the first day of class. I teach asynchronous online, so I don't have a first day of class, but instead I have some activities I want my students to do, like post an introduction, complete a quiz or something like that. And I tell my students, I give this information is in the syllabus, I put it in announcements. I've also got it on inside on a Canvas page somewhere. And I tell my students, look, if you don't do these things, I'm going to drop you. So please do these things. And I want this information to pop, again, for those students who are privileged with sight. So I'm going to add an icon at the bottom there, and I'll read this out loud in case you can't see it at the very bottom of this, right? I've got the list of activities, and then I say all are due Sunday at the end of the first week and are required to maintain your enrollment in the course. By using Canvas's icons and that border thing that I just showed you, I can make it pop a little bit, right? That's the official orange color for CRC. I've got the bell icon there. And that is something, again, that I can do to add it to make it pop a little bit. So next, I'll show you how to do that. And again, that's that same text, the same contents is what I showed you from my screenshot. So I'll go to edit again. And so I'm going to go to HTML view. This is at the bottom, so this will make it a little bit easier. And I actually have to nest 3 divs within each other, or 2 within one, or within however that works. So this is how it works. I'm going to open up my first div. And then again, I said 3. Oops. So at the bottom, I'm going to close all 3 here. Oh, look at that. I did a typo. Close it. There we go. I've got them all on the same line. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. So I've got the first one. I've got that open. And actually, let me go ahead and type all 3 so I can tell you what's inside each of those. Okay. The first one is the outer one. And this is where I'm going to add style. And I'm just going to copy and paste because that way I'll get it right. So I'm styling this first div, right? The box, the border, you see the margins, that's 10 pixels on either side. I've got border that's 3 pixels thick. It's solid. And this code here, F58025, that's the official CRC orange. And I've got some padding as well. The next div, I'm going to add what's called a class. And the word class is how we call a style from an external style sheet. So on any page inside Canvas anywhere, because there's a style sheet that the header refers to every single Canvas page, if you type the word class, whatever you type next, it's going to look for that on that Canvas style sheet. And I'll show you the style sheet where you can access everything. So it's going to be IC-image-text-combo, okay? I didn't make it up but I know this is what you got to type. And then the next tag is actually I, and I'm not sure what the I tag stands for, maybe info, but it's I class equals icon hyphen alerts. So icon hyphen alerts, alerts is the bell. That's what that is. And the icon is saying, hey, there's, go grab from the list of icons, this particular icon here, alerts. And I'm going to close the tag. I'm actually going to do the greater than symbol and then the angle brackets around closing the I. And then the next div is going to be class equals, okay, again, you'll have access to all this code, so you don't have to retype it as I'm typing it out. IC hyphen image hyphen text hyphen combo underscore text, close quote. Ooh, okay. And then because there's a div, I don't need the paragraph inside because paragraph and div are similar in terms of the spacing that gets added. But I am going to change this from P, excuse me, to M for emphasis. And so this is an example of using HTML for formatting. This makes it italic. So now let's switch to the WYSIWYG view, and I'm going to make a comment here. Right, you see the color of the box, right? You see the italic text. You don't see the icon. The icon is only visible when you save the page. And there it is, okay? And I'm looking at that. I don't like that there's not a space in between the bell and the text, so I'm going to edit it and just basically, I'm going to add a space. And I'm looking inside my code that I just typed, and why don't I see a space there? I'm not sure. So you know what? I'll just go right in front of the A and hit a space and see if that fixes it. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. Okay. By the way, you may notice this actually goes back to the widget that I showed you at the beginning, the disclosure widget. The same thing here. You can format the stuff that's inside the div, right? Inside that code. It's just italic text here. I could have images. I could have whatever I wanted inside that. It's just regular HTML. So that's also possible. All right, let's move on. And what do we got next? We have making a striped table. So this is another example of calling a class using one of the classes that's part of the Canvas style sheet. This is a table that's got headers identified, right? It's got a caption at the top, but there's no formatting involved, right? It's just straight, white text or black text with a white background. What you can do, and it's actually pretty easy to add this code to a table to make it a striped table. So hopefully you can see that every other row has got a gray background, a light gray background. The mouse is hovering over the bottom row, which is why it's got the light blue background over. So it's interactive in that sense. And it's a neat thing to do to make it, again, a little bit more interactive and look a little bit better. How we do that in Canvas is we take a table, like here's that same table that you saw in the screenshot, go to Edit, and then HTML view. And the only change I need to make is in the table tag itself. So every table begins with a table tag. Briefly covering what's in the table tag, just so you're aware, right? There's the caption at the top. T body is the table body, and there's a table row. So in this table row, there are two cells. They're both identified as table headers. That's what the TH means. And then you can see the row is closed. And then the second row, right? Table row, there's table row closed. TD, I'm not sure what the D means, but those are the two cells that are in the second row of the table. So to make the striped table, I go to the table and I'm going to add class equals, and again, I'm going to type it all out. You'll have access to the code in the resource document. IC-table space, IC-table double dash hover dash row space IC-table double dash striped. All right, did that do it? I don't see it here, so I think this is one of the things where I have to save. Yep, it worked. So just a few characters, and again, you'll be able to copy and paste. I challenged myself to type it. I'm obviously looking at it as I typed it. I don't have it memorized. And I haven't yet, oh my gosh, I'm about to jinx myself. I haven't yet made a mistake I'm sure I will at some points today. Anyway, so that's, again, I hope that looks relatively easy, right? It's just a short block of code. You add to the table tag, and then boom, it makes the table look a lot nicer than I think the standard table is. Let's move on. Making a tabs page. I have information here. This, the screenshot, you can only see 2 parts. That's actually a 3-part thing. And what I like to do is not have a long content page, have a shorter content page or a shorter window, right, for the rich content editor. But I still want my students to have access to different types of information. So what I do is I create a tabs page, and it's going to look like this. And you see there at the top there, I've got the headers, right, for those 3 different parts. And then as students select the header, it'll show that content on the page. We use tab pages in Canvas all the time on the settings page. That's a tabs page. If you're on the people page and you're switching between your people list, and if you're using groups, those are also tabs. So Canvas, this is built into Canvas code, which is something that we can call on. Again, it's the class that we're going to add. This particular thing is actually the most complex of all the things I'm going to demonstrate today that are on my list. So it'll give me another opportunity to make a mistake as I am going through this. So let's go ahead and do the demo. Okay, so here's my 3-part content page. I've also got something at the bottom that I want to make a footer, right? So that's always at the bottom of the page, no matter which tab the students are looking at. And I could also add header information. I don't have any header information here, but I'll go ahead and I may include some when I get to the demo. So how I do this, you know what, I'm actually going to do something that's a little bit easier for me that I always do at this point. And I'm going to import a sample page that has the tab structure in the code into my course. And that way I have something that I can work with to do some copying and pasting without messing up my content page that I'm looking at. And I'm going to access that via the Canvas Commons. So in case you don't know, the Canvas Commons is linked from Global Navigation, and it is a tool that anyone who uses Canvas anywhere in North America, so it used to be the world, but they've changed it thanks to privacy regulations in Europe and other places. Anyone who uses Canvas anywhere in North America can share and import and copy and whatever, anything that's been created with Canvas. So what I've done is I've created I call it a sample page with tabs. I put it in the Canvas Commons, and I'm going to import that into this class here. So I'll show you how to do that. The Canvas Commons, again, is linked from the Global Navigation. And when you open up Canvas Commons, it immediately goes to the search page. What you can do is do a keyword search for anything. So you could find something that's in your discipline. And the things that you can find that, by the way, you can also share, those things can be quizzes, discussions. You can find or share an entire course or a content page, documents, right? There's all kinds of stuff that you can do. When you create or when you search for stuff, you can do stuff by grade levels. There's also a way to limit it to stuff that's only released within Los Rios for us here in our Canvas, or within California's community colleges. And again, when you share something, if you decide to, you can attach these limits. I only want this visible to folks in Los Rios. You can actually not share it with anyone, in which case only you can access it, right? You can go there and import it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear my filters. What now? Let's do all. And I'm going to do a search for sample page tabs. And it's one of the first results here. Is one that I created. So we've got the Hawk logo on it. Anytime you find a resource in the Commons, select it, you get a preview. And the preview won't show you the tabs, right? Because it's not importing the class, which is part of the Canvas style sheet, not part of the Commons style sheet. But on the right side of the page, I can import or download this. So I'll select the import download button. And then it's going to show me all the courses on this Canvas server. This is my Fall 23 Flex workshop. So I'm going to select that course. I'm going to click the Import into Course button, and then it'll be there in my Pages area. I'll show you that in a moment. I can also download it, and you can download it and then import it into Canvas as well. But since I'm already logged in, I'll select Import. I've got the receipt at the top. You successfully started the import. So let's take a look at my pages in my class. view all pages, and there should be a page there that says sample page with tabs. There it is. So this is what I just imported into this class. If I look at it, you'll see it's got tabs. So what I can do is I can copy and paste the code from this page into the other page. And that way I'm not accidentally poisoning the well, because as you'll see, the code here is fairly complicated. So I'll select the edit button, go into code view, select all of that and copy. Now I'm going to go back to my page that I was working on before. Tabs, here we go. Edit, code view. Okay, I'm going to put this all at the top of this window. And now I'm going to talk through what the code is, and then I'll start doing some copying and pasting. So here is a paragraph that is, as I mentioned here, right, header text. That means it's always visible within the Rich Content Editor window, no matter which tab the students are on. So I'll go ahead and add a word. I'll add some text here, and I'll say, make sure you read the contents on all 3 tabs, okay? I've had students, when I've used tab pages, who don't read what's on the other 2 tabs or whatever, so I want to make sure I let them know to read all 3. And then here is the class, right? Div, class, enhanceable content tabs. So that div is actually closed at the bottom here, right? Closed div. And then you see here, I've got some footer text underneath, right? Footer text appears at the bottom of each tab. In this example, I've already got some footer text, so I'm going to go grab that right now. At the very bottom of the page, I've got this one paragraph, Omnia in probatione, however you pronounce it. And I'm going to cut that, and I'm going to replace it right here. So this text should appear always at the bottom of the page. Within this div, enhanceable content tabs, I actually have multiple divs. There's one for each tab. But before I get to those, at the very top, I've got an unnumbered list, right? That's the bulleted list. The style hides the bullets, but the bulleted list has, in this case, you see 3 items, right? It's got the labels, tab 1, tab 2, tab 3. I know that these are called pars una, pars tribus, and pars duo. So I'm going to just type over that. This is the link text, right? This is what the students will click on to activate the tab. Is that una, pars duo, pars tribus, okay? The grammar of this list item is I have an A tag. So A is an anchor. It's actually the hyperlink tag. So anytime you see a hyperlink on a web page, if you look at the code, you would see A there. But this is not a link to an external website. This is an internal link. And this actually references what's called a bookmark, or there may be another word for that. And the name of this bookmark is tabs-1. So the hashtag means this is not an external link, right? It's not looking for some web page outside of Canvas or maybe inside this Canvas course. This is a link that's inside this web page. The link name, the identifier, is tabs-1. So somewhere in this code is going to be ID or identification equals tabs-1. So when a student clicks on when a student clicks on pars una, that's what they're going to click on, the words. They're going to go to whatever section of this page has the label tabs-1. And it's going to be another div, right? So the content here, you see, there's an H2. It's got some, you know what? I already know what the content is because I've already got it on my page. So I'm going to get rid of this contents, give myself some blank space to play with, scroll down within the page, and here it is, pars una, right? And I know it's going to be these 2 paragraphs. So I've got that text selected. I'm going to cut and then paste in this space up here. I'm going to pause right now, and I'm going to see what this looks like. And then I'm going to come back and fix it. So if I switch to the WYSIWYG view, I won't see the tabs because those only appear when the page is saved. But you can see here, this is the link, right? It's got underlined, it's blue, it's the bulleted list. But when I save this, right, there's pars una. So there's the content that I cut and pasted just now. underneath the tabs, there's my footer, right? That text that I copied and pasted earlier. Here is stuff that I haven't yet moved. If I click on Parse Duo, this should be empty. Oh, no, it's not empty. It's got that sample content that's there, right? You see it says tab 2 and then tab 3. So now I'm going to go back to edit mode, and I'm going to fix that. And I'm going to do this. What I'm going to try to be clever here is, instead of going into the code view, I'm confident that I can just cut and paste within WYSIWYG view. So there's what I want in tab 2. And I'm going to click on the words tab 2 and select all this. And let's see if I break this. Because this is, right, this is a lot easier than messing with the code because I'm in WYSIWYG view. But let's see if this worked. Hey, it worked. What I just did, the cut and paste within the WYSIWYG view, it's really easy to accidentally overwrite some of that code. And then that messes up the tab structure. I've done this lots of times. I've helped people who have done this lots of times as well. So again, that's something just to be aware of, which is why I actually prefer working in code view, because then it's more obvious, right, where the code is and isn't. So let's go ahead and do that last one. Edit in code view. I'm going to select part 3, cut, and then I'm going to overwrite, right, all this content that's here within the div ID equals tabs 3. Okay, so I'm going to hit paste. I'm going to hit save. I know this will work. And it did. Great. Let me say a couple of things, and then I want to see if you guys have questions. Number one is, I can add a 4th tab or a 5th or as many tabs as I want. The key is, if I decide to do that, I'll go ahead and add, I'll just copy and paste, this line, right? I can add a 4th thing here. It's very important that I change the anchor or bookmark link up top. And, it's important that I add a 4th, right? Before the final closing div, I need to stick another div in here. And I need to make sure that this div, has the, I think all I need to do is just do ID equals, right? And that this ID, whatever I type within these quotation marks, matches exactly what I have up top. And here is some content for tab 4. And let's see if I got that right. Yeah. And within the divs, within the tabs, I can have different contents. You can actually nest tabs within tabs. I saw someone do this once, and I was like, oh my God. But it worked. It took some very careful pointing, very careful reading of code. If you like paying attention to detail, you will love working with this kind of stuff. Thank you for watching this recording of a professional development presentation I did for Customers Server College. A link to the resource page that I mentioned is included in the description. Never stop learning, and I'll see you in the next one.